Go.
Wait.
Yeah.
Now we are now recording. Guys, tonight is a real treat. We have the man, the myth, the legend, John Sincaglia, the original OJ, the original John of Berkeley Heights. The real deal with us today. And John is a kind of a wealth of knowledge, and we'll be tapping into that a little bit. We were just talking about Laura's Laura, why don't you describe what you do?
I see myself as a connector. Sometimes it involves alcohol before noon.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Well, we'll just give it at that. Sean is very quiet. Sean doesn't want to talk
very
about
quiet,
it too much.
and I think that's smart.
Yeah, John doesn't want to say much either. Which John? There's three of us.
We'll disparage ourselves. Oh yeah, how do we identify each other?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna call you Leo. You can call me JP, and we'll just give John.
Okay.
We'll give John the title John.
Okay.
Who am I?
And then Leo, you're Laura.
Okay.
I'm J-Lo.
Yeah.
I'm J-Lo.
All right. So John, why don't you talk to? So I think you've been a pretty strong voice about throughout your time in Berkeley Heights, but like recently, I think as far as like what a lot of people have started to go online with the Board of Education, and I think it's important for people to sort of understand or know your experience and your background. Would you just kind of mind sharing that with folks?
Sure. I was in public education, both, paid and volunteer for probably 46, 47 years. I was first a teacher in the New Brunswick school system. Initially, I taught a self-contained 7th grade class that I was only provisionally certified. But then they changed things around. I became strictly a social studies teacher, which was what my certification was. During that time, the 12 years I was there, I served also as the president of the Education Association for like 3.5 years. And I was a pretty aggressive advocate for the staff. However, as things went on, I wanted to move my career in another direction. I went back to college. I had already gotten my master's degree earlier, but I went back and got recertified in administration, including business administration, and then became the business administrator, first in the town of Demarest in Bergen County. Then after 2 years there, I went to Manville in Somerset County. And after 1 year there, I was named the acting superintendent of schools because the superintendent retired, and basically the board members there didn't like any of the principals or other administrators, and I guess they liked me at that time, even after only 1 year. So I served that for about 6 months and helped them find a new superintendent. So I stayed there for 3 years and then went to Nutley, another career, an upgraded move, a larger school district where I spent 16 years as the school business administrator. After I retired, which is actually a long time ago, I retired June 30th of 2002. And I then did a series of interim jobs, Roselle Park, Roxbury, Verona, Roseland, and then 2.5 years as the county school business administrator, working for the New Jersey Department of Education as the Morris County School Business Administrator, where I basically had to oversee the financial and regulatory activities of about 40 school districts. And then, of course, as I guess you all know, I got elected to the Board of Education in Berkeley Heights in 2004, was there 4 full terms, spent about 2 years as vice president and almost 2 years as president. During the time I was there, they changed the law about when the elections were held from April. And so when I became president, I served for like 20 months, and I decided I was only going to do it for 2 years. I decided that was enough. But then I stayed on the board. And of course, because of my background, I was on the finance committee right away. And I chaired the finance committee for 10 of my 12 years there. So I was very active in putting budgets together. Back in the day when I was employed, all the budgets I had to do went to the voters. I'm proud to say of the 21 budgets that I helped craft, 19 of them got approved by the voters. So, that's always something that I hang my hat on. So, that's my professional background. Interesting, one little interesting fact too, but when I got on the board, my son, who was a senior at GL at the time, was one of the student reps. So him and I sat on the board together for 2 months before he graduated.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cool.
it was kind of cool. Yeah. He told Dr. Bazo, who was the superintendent, do not let my father sit next to me.
All right. I think it's important for people to hear, like sort of the background, because a lot of times, when we're kind of talking about the budget, out sort of in the social media sphere, there's a lot of attempts to sort of undermine the credibility around the arguments that folks are trying to make as to why that process was so broken last year. And you were, I think, a pretty well-informed and credible voice, not just for the budget issue, but for the reconfiguration. Leo, where's Leo and Cy?
I'm here.
You just can't walk away, man. I'm trying to talk, and you guys have your back to me.
I'm saving electricity. Stop yelling at me.
Where are you, in a cabin?
Yes.
What is that? A tool shed?
But it's my garage.
Backyard.
The bar.
Okay, that looks like the start of a horror movie.
I don't want to show you everything because I don't want you to see the code violation.
No, horror movies always start like these wooden houses and shit, and then all of a sudden you see demons in the back. Anyway, so
Whoa.
John.
Going to be eating people.
Whoa.
Anyway, so John brought a lot of credibility to our concern. I mean, the one thing I've always said to you, John, is I was like, and I had that conversation with you a couple of times, how appreciative I was of you kind of speaking up when you did, because at the time I felt like we were just a bunch of parents who a lot of people just wrote off as being crazy, uninformed, and angry, and having you kind of add a voice of credibility to some of the concerns we had with the reconfiguration in the budget, I think really helped. I mean, it didn't stop the reconfiguration. I don't think anything would have, but I think at the very least it put the issue kind of on the radar for the town.
Well,
so
what always bothered me about that was initially was the process. I happen to find out from my next door neighbor who has three kids in the school system, 2 in middle school, 1 in elementary, that teachers are being asked, where do they want to teach next year and what grade they want to teach because they were going to change things. I said, what is this? Like, nobody knows it. What's going on here? And then, of course, I found out that there was this plan going on, which was never being discussed openly by the full Board of Education. That's not how things are supposed to work. And then suddenly, all right, they had these meetings, and the meetings were basically informational meetings, but with no chance for the public to have input to make any changes. And it seemed that that the president of the board, Doug, who I served with for probably almost the whole time. I think he got on the board I guess I was there maybe 2 years before he got appointed. That he was being the advocate, which is fine, in terms of his own position. But the board had never taken a position, and it was like, this is the way it's going to be. And there was never a debate. And that's not how things are supposed to happen. We didn't hear from individual people until the last night when they voted on it. And that is not being responsive to the public, in my opinion.
So let's get to the budget. And Shauna, I'm going to kind of bring you in if you can, because you've wrote like 2 really, really good articles, or informative articles, the 88% one and, the fiscal cliff one.
Yeah.
Do you kind of want to give us an update where the 88% one was the most popular. Like, if you look at the numbers, that like shot through the roof, but really the fiscal cliff one for me was the most telling in terms of the business administrator and just kind of the fantasy novel that was spun around that. So can you kind of give us an update with your concerns on the budget up to this point?
Yeah. Well, concern number 1 was that despite being told last year that they would improve the process, I'm seeing the exact same thing happening this year, where we're going to be presented with a tentative budget next month. We won't see what it is until they give us the presentation. We'll have limited time. You have 3 minutes to make whatever comments based only on that presentation. We have the business administrator, and she reiterated this at the last Board of Ed meeting. Don't worry, there's still time to make changes. Bullshit. No, there's not. They're going to vote on the final budget in April, and it'll
This
be
is a family show, Shauna.
well. Yeah.
Wow, coming from you.
Wait till after 8, Shauna.
So that was concerning. The other thing that really was kind of distressing to me was to hear her talk about the fiscal cliff. And the two things that she brought up were special education students being a large value item and teachers' salaries, and pointing out their 3.5% increase as being the reason that we had to go off this fiscal cliff. There was nothing said about the lawyers' fees, nothing said about how large our administration has grown, nothing said, it was like, what is she discussing here? So I was upset about that. And then when she said staffing cuts, they're thinking teachers or paras or something. They're not thinking their own jobs.
So I'm going to go to Cy, and I don't want to kind of talk a little, so last year was when you were on the board, it kind of led to sort of this quite eventful public discussion, which to me was really actually refreshing to see board members debating publicly and writing, sort of the budget process. And I guess, from your perspective, I'd like to hear, like, from the, I guess without doing any, without betraying anything that might be problematic, because God knows, what was your perspective from the inside in terms of looking at how the budget process went last year?
So it was my first year on the board, and I had reached out to previous board members like Sincaglia to understand what I think. From our initial training, once we get sworn in, we are told that the two most important things are budget and policy making, to basically where we can add value. So I wanted to understand basically what's the timeline, and I was informed from by multiple ex-board members that we should receive like some sort of a budget packet with all the information, including the enrollment numbers and what is being asked by different, administrators, principals, and what's being presented or prepared as tentative budget by, I think, February. And when I asked for it, I was initially told only the committee members, only the finance committee is privy to this information, especially being a negotiations year. I said, fine, but can we look at it so we can, provide any input? And the basic response was no. If you don't like a line item, then basically you just vote no on it. There is no discussion. You don't understand how we arrived at a particular rolled up number. Like, let's say if there is a X amount of $1 million for transportation, how did we arrive at it? Why do we need that? No, there was not going to be any information. So that was a big concern for me. And we were going to pass a $60 million plus, dollar budget with the 2% cap automatically. And when I looked, and as you know, and as I wrote the letter, we got that like within, like, I think we didn't even get technically 24 hours or to review this budget. And we were told, and it was incomplete. There was no enrollment numbers data in it. This was the tentative budget. So imagine being a board member if you're given this data, which is pages and pages, but like just before a board meeting. But my biggest concern was the taxpayers haven't even looked at it. Like, it wasn't even presented to the public. And I thank John Sincaglia for writing a very good email to the board, asking them and, speaking from his experience on how it should be done. But obviously it was not paid, nobody paid attention to it. That's
John, did you even ever get a reply to that email? I'm sorry, Sai. Did you ever even get a reply to that email? No, you didn't. Okay.
No.
I'm sorry, Sai. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was my biggest concern. And as you saw, I said that I don't think we can vote on it because this information is incomplete, but well, nobody heard to that. And the other key point that I want to make is when we moved, I don't know which year exactly, but it's been over a decade, I think, John, that we moved from public voting on the Board of Ed budget to, the board.
It's 10 years. It was 2012.
Okay, so exactly 10 years. And we moved away from, thank you. And to basically the board saying we're going to have a 2% cap. But the way it works is when you go and look in deeply into the debt service, what's happening is we roll off the debt service. So basically we see some reduction in the tax percentage being applied, but then we increase our operating expenses. So we are charging more. So when you look at it, and from last year's data that I saw, I think we are almost at 2.3% increase.
Well,
And
the debt service is not part of the cap. Debt service has nothing to do with the cap.
exactly. So they kind of, I think there is this whole fiscal cliff is basically being referred to. I think we need to do more research on how this is being worked out, but we are not sticking within the 2%. We are going above the 2%.
Well, there are waivers that the state allows you to take for enrollment, for health insurance costs. There's some other things there. And it has to be reviewed and approved at the county superintendent's level. So it's not automatic, but it's true. The 2% cap you can go over it. Plus if you didn't hit the cap the previous year, you can bank the cap, which doesn't mean you're banking any money. You're banking the ability to raise more taxes. A lot of people hear, oh, bank cap, oh, we have extra money. No, we have more taxing authority. So that's a difference a lot of people don't understand.
John,
Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that banking the cap means you could take a 2% and roll it to the next year and make it 4%.
Well, if you didn't take any of it, yeah, in all honesty, John, I don't remember if you do the whole amount, but there is unused cap, and there's a formula that exists, and again, I haven't done this in a number of years now, but what you don't use, and I don't know if it would be the whole thing, if for some reason you didn't have to raise taxes at all, you can bank that, and I think you can bank it for actually a couple of years. Again, there's regulations, and you could find them on the Department of Education's website.
But it is normal practice to do this. It's not abnormal to utilize the cap.
You have the ability. It doesn't mean that every district does it. It means that if they don't use it, because a lot of times you don't use it because you didn't need it, and then you don't use it the following year. We didn't always have that option. When Governor Christie became governor, they found out there was a tremendous shortfall in the state budget in terms of being able to finish the fiscal year. So we lost all of our state aid. And then the budget was defeated that year. That was back when we were still voting on the budgets. There was no bank cap we could live with. There was nothing we could do. We survived somehow. One thing I want to just also add, I talked about process before. In the letter, an email I sent to the board, I referenced to Mike Sincaglia, who was the president, who had sat on town council, and the town council has a series of meetings where the department heads come in, they discuss things, they hear things from the administrators, and the public has a chance to debate it, and the council members talk back and forth. None of that occurred. Like Cy says, they got information, except for the people who were on finance, the day before. And all it was that the public saw was a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Yep.
So I just want to be clear, when we're talking about caps, no one is, advocating that we bust a cap.
I'm not taking
I gotta go.
position. I'm just saying that bank cap doesn't mean more money. It means the ability to tax more money.
The township has the same ability. It's the same. The township and BOE have the same 2% cap ability, and then almost the same waivers. Is that right? They can go above 2 in certain emergency situations.
The town also has an appropriations cap that's besides the tax cap.
Okay.
No, but my basic question is they both have this allowance to take from the bank cap, but it increases the taxpayer burden at the end of the day.
Right.
We are seeing a declining enrollment, and from the latest report from the board secretary, even the mountainside student enrollment is dropping. So why is there a need to keep on asking or like just because we have 2%, let's go 2% as of October. And I don't have data beyond November, but as of October 20, we were having almost, the district had 2.7 million in capital reserves, and as per the total fund balance, I think the audit report said we had in June 2021 we had 8.6 million. So where is this money going? And then we got the COVID SR funds. And last year, the board president indicated that money in the budget can be moved around as needed. So why are we allowing built-in slush funds? That's my key question.
So I want to just bring in Laura a little bit to this, because Laura, last year I think, so I think the other piece of it that we forget is how sloppy it was. I remember that summer school was missing from the original budget that was brought into county. And then Laura, you identified a whole bunch of shit that didn't make sense. And did you ever get answers to the questions on sort of some of the line items that you were concerned about?
Are you kidding me? It's been, this is my 1-year anniversary that I have officially not received a single answer from any of my emails, and there's over a dozen from a single Board of Ed member.
What were some of the key areas that you could think of? I don't know if you have them memorized. When it came to the budget, was there anything that comes to mind that kind of stood out for you?
So, I think as an individual and as a group, I feel like we've become a safe haven for teachers to kind of come and say, hey, can you stir this up? Can you make some noise? And I definitely had a lot of teachers kind of reaching out saying, we didn't know that we were getting all these cuts. There's cuts every year, but you never know, they weren't involved in this process where they were told, hey, the cuts that you're receiving to your classroom supplies may be between X amount of dollars and Y amount of dollars. It's just, they received the budget saying, this is what you've been cut. So, for me, it goes back to what John said, and it's about this process, which, this whole mindset, like, trust us, we know what we're doing, doesn't work anymore. Like, show us the process and we'll let you know if it's working.
I think many in the community feel that switching the process to where the residents voted on the board, Board of Education budget will actually build the trust back in, I think what has happened is now we have gone to 2%, and no offense to you, John, like I know you were on the board, like when we moved back from voting, like took away the rights of the public from, voting on the budget. But now what we see is there is budget creep, and many are not convinced that the overall budget requires a 2% growth every year. So why not start with like a zero-based budget, account for the fixed costs, and then plan for the rest? And that way, yeah.
Why did
John? Yeah.
Why? So this is just to kind of tie. Why did we move away from the public voting on it?
Well, John, go ahead, John. I think that was something that actually we had talked about. So,
Well, when the legislature passed a law that gave boards of education the ability to move their elections of board members to November, and if you did that, you no longer had to have a vote on budget unless. And not on the whole budget, unless you were going to exceed cap. So if you had a special question that's going to go over cap, that had to go to the voters. I disagree with Sai. I think that having people elected in November, because April elections, we were lucky if you got 10% to 15% was a big turnout. Sometimes it was 7 or 8%. You had a very small number of people who were voting on things. November, let's face it, we know that even in an off election year, you get a much bigger turnout, so that I think there's accountability on who's there to make the decisions. Now, the unfortunate thing is people don't want to run. And, you get people who are there for the wrong reasons or who are unqualified or whatever.
Yeah. That's true.
I'm interested to see, it's a little irrelevant, but maybe relevant in that I feel post-pandemic, a lot more community-based relations, I guess you can call it, with councils and board. I think every town is seeing some sort of outcry from its residents towards transparency and better communication. And I just recently read that Westfield is going back to the April Board of Ed election. So I'd be interested to see,
Ooh.
you know, compared to John, when, you know, when you ran, when they had the April election, to see if that voter turnout is you know, I think it'll be interesting.
Well, it's
There are probably no more than a dozen or 15 districts in the state that vote in April for their board and still vote on the budget. It's been universally, accepted. And I mentioned to John earlier, we had a phone conversation. One of the things that, again, when I was, in the business, is we've had to spend so much time doing a PR job as opposed to, it's one thing to explain it, but you had to go out and basically do a dog
Sell the
and pony
budget.
show. And that wasted a lot of time, a lot of effort on things that I thought were more valuable. And of course, I didn't have, for all the years, except half of my last year, in a much bigger district than this, I never had an assistant. I had staff members, but I never had an assistant.
Oh my
Add
God.
that.
Are you
That's crazy.
sure? Are
So,
you sure
John,
you
so I
didn't
think I
require
think the real
15?
problem is, so I think that the reason why, so if you have a normative and functioning board, I don't think people push for the idea of voting on a budget. But it's when you start doing kind of the shit that they're doing that the cost benefit analysis starts shifting, right? So not having a vote on the budget works in some contexts if your board is transparent, if your board allows for public input, then people and you feel like your board is competent and working in your best interest, then people kind of trust it. When you start kind of seeing some of the shit that we've seen over the past 3 years, because I don't think these calls for putting a school budget on a public vote, they weren't happening until 3 years ago. That's when, I know that's when I started thinking about it seriously. So I agree with you. So at some level, John, I agree with you. I'm kind of torn, right? Because I think on one hand, if you have a functioning, transparent, working board, that process works. When voters stop, or residents and parents stop trusting the board, then that dog and pony show is what they want because they don't trust it anymore. You know what I mean?
But if a budget is defeated, okay, and again, you're not voting on the whole budget, you're only voting on the tax levy. You don't vote on the budget, you vote on the tax levy. Okay? And if that is defeated, then what happens is the town council has to make a decision about what they want to do. Do they want to cut? They could technically, I think they could technically add, that never happens. But, and they've got a short window to do it. And if they overdo it, you can appeal the cut to the Commissioner of Education.
But
Now,
John,
that's a long process.
All right, so let's move on. I want to go to ethics now. I want to go to ethics.
okay, no, one
Guys,
last
I have to
point.
maintain order here,
No,
man.
one last
The people
point.
Okay.
trust me to maintain order.
Okay, one last point. See, we were supposed to have
I can't do that
referendum.
with Cy. When Cy's a guest, you can't maintain order.
I'm sorry.
with Cy.
I just have to say, we were supposed to have a referendum in 2020, okay? And it was decided we were all going to get a ballot question on a $4 million media center, okay?
Right.
The moment the governor announced that we are going to get mail-in ballots, okay, the board decided, oh my God, every registered voter in Berkeley Heights is going to get a ballot, and there's going to be one question that the Board of Education wants $4 million. Do you want to vote on this or not? They said, oh no, it's we are going to move it to next year. And then I kept asking from January of 2021, when is the referendum happening? And Doug Reinstein was like, oh, we're going to decide and we're going to get back to you. And then we had these closed door meetings. They decided on OPMA. They kept moving funds into capital reserves and the capital account. And then they basically railroaded redistricting. This is 20. And then I asked last year, what is happening to the referendum? It's 2 years. No answer. 2023. Do we know? Are we going to have a referendum?
All right. So let's just. So I think we all got our things in on the budget. I want to go. So the only thing I'm going to say about the budget, because I spent 30,000 hours just trying to get the budget. So while you guys you were having these sort of sophisticated fucking discussions about the budget, I just wanted the document. So just giving you the timeline, I sent in an Oprah request to the business administrator for the budget somewhere on April 3rd. She gave me the quote-unquote user-friendly version on April 11th. I then emailed the county superintendent, who had it, I think, but didn't want to give it to me. So then I emailed him, CCing Bramnick and like the FBI and like
No, it
the
was
guy,
an
you know, the king of
custodian.
Denmark and shit.
No, you
And
had
then,
to be an
like,
Oprah custodian.
amazingly, that night, the state finally sent me the full budget that everybody said didn't exist. I mean, that's scary to me in the sense that, like, all these other things are kind of important, but like, if you can't even get the fundamental document, if it takes, like, I think it took like 2 weeks for me to finally get a responsive document, like, you know, and publish it.
This dovetails right into ethics.
Let's go to ethics.
Like, this is ethics right here. What you're saying, like, you asked for a document that you had to go to everybody to get, and it actually did exist, but they made it as if it wasn't there.
Right, and so this goes to the legal bills, and we're gonna have a little bit of a firecracker this week. We're not gonna disclose it today, but all this shit about legal, all this stuff about how we need a business administrator, it ties directly to the improper use of attorneys in sort of managing some of these Oprah requests, and an improper, in my opinion, these are my opinions, improper redactions, improper stonewalling. This money isn't the result of Oprah requests, or the need isn't the result of Oprah requests. It's connected directly to how they are approaching Oprah requests. And in my opinion, and I think it's going to bear out, much of this is just not what Oprah, you know, it stands in contradiction to the law. But let's go to ethics.
Okay.
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned lawyers, you know, and you and I talked about this a little bit earlier. We didn't go into detail. The legal advice that this board is getting, and I got 4 instances, okay, of things that are totally wrong. The first was the candidates debate, okay? Supposedly, it's a partisan activity. Hogwash. Every candidate's invited. It's run by the League of Women Voters. We did it for years and years, both not for Board of Education, but also mayor and council. Suddenly, it's partisan. Ridiculous. The nepotism thing. Not only was the board policy violated, the New Jersey Administrative Code was violated, because the New Jersey Administrative Code says that you could carve out an exception for like one of these little jobs, but this Board of Education didn't do that. So the policy they had was permissible, and it was violated. The attorney should have known that. They should have read the policy book. They should have read the administrative code, and they ignored it. The third thing is, I've seen the attorney tell people they can't discuss a personnel matter. Yes, the board can't, but you cannot prevent people from their First Amendment right of bringing up something. Now, the board is constrained about responding. And by the way, there's a New Jersey Supreme Court case on this. It had to do with a father who was pissed off about the way his daughter was, I think, on a volleyball or swimming team or something. It's Bessler versus the Board of Education of West Windsor, decided in 2010. And the Supreme Court said that, yeah, if somebody's disruptive, if they're throwing F-bombs out, that's another story. But if they're arguing a point, you can't prevent them. And when that decision was handed down, I was at a workshop. I even asked, I said, well, what if somebody brings up about a student? And we were told by attorneys, you know what? It's on the person who's saying it, but the board is not supposed to try to stop that. And I thought that was not right, but that's the way that the court decision came down.
That's the degree to which a person has the right to say something.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, this ethics thing, where it's clear that a board can't file ethics charges against another member, and then what they did with Pam Stanley is an absolute farce.
Oh, and that's being bared. I mean, that's kind of playing itself out. Yep. All right, but let's go to the ethics complaints, right? Because so let's go through all of the shit that's happened. The first thing was the complaint on the issue with this is not ethics. We're gonna do an inventory of everything. There was the finding on bidding violations and educational adequacy. That was back right after the reconfiguration happened. there was the settlement, a de facto settlement agreement with the prosecutor's office on an OPMA violation. There is a ethics complaint substantiated by the SEC on the board president and board vice president speaking for the board in an editorial letter to the budget. There is the ethics complaint against the first vote to have an ethics complaint filed against a board member. An ethics complaint on the second, all these are substantiated. A second vote on that same issue, a second ethics complaint substantiated on that issue, and then a third complaint substantiated on that issue. There are also several Oprah lawsuits that I can tell you are not going well currently for the Board of Education. And in the middle of most of this is our business administrator. If you think about all the planets rotating around all this shit, it's been about the budget or statements made about the business administrator, or the only thing that I think doesn't connect to that are the first two that I mentioned, which is the educational adequacy bidding and OPMA. I'm sorry, Saig, you had your hand raised.
There's one more ethics violation you forgot against the superintendent. The nepotism.
Oh, right, nepotism.
Oh, the nepotism.
And that doesn't connect to her either. But if you look at all the other ones, it all revolves around that, both in terms of like who we're protecting by. So we're protecting what? What is it that you're protecting? You can't criticize minutes. That's why the district is now enthralled in three now ethics complaints with multiple substantiated claims, because we can't talk about minutes. And also, the budget, which it seems like the board was misinformed and just went with that misinformation or decided to do that. In any event, like I'm just going to kind of leave the room.
The other thing was First Amendment. You can't question about where did the COVID ESSER funds go? How are we accounting for it? That was apparently a big no-no.
So I'm just going to leave the door open for that on you guys in terms of ethics complaints and anything you guys wanted to say. I just wanted to kind of do an inventory of where we are with that.
Well, I can tell you, I filed the first ethics complaint that had to do with the board. Sorry, lost my train of thought a little bit. Making the motion to have the board attorney draft charges against Sai. Mine is out of the SEC. They forwarded my entire complaint. The board attorney's motion to dismiss was denied. My complaint was in its entirety moved to the Office of Administrative Law, and now will be heard by a judge. In the process, trial date is June 19th-ish.
And this is an important point, right? So we are talking about like 3 or 4 ethics complaints, but within each of them are multiple violations. And on most of them, the majority of them were validated by the SEC. So we're not talking about like ethics complaints with one ethics violation. Like in the case of Pam Stanley, there were like 11 that they sort of approved and moved forward on, from what I understand. Right, Laura?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's important to say of all the sitting board members, I think with the exception of 3, every single one of them, including our administrator and business administrator, are all involved in these. It's not just like there's 1 or 2 players. They are all have some level of, I don't know what word I'm looking for, involvement.
They're all hip deep.
The right legal advice would have been for the attorney to say, hey, Pam Stanley, or hey, Robert Gianchuli, if you want to file an ethics complaint against one of your colleagues, you're free to do it, but the board can't.
Yes. Yep.
And this is the basic, where is the board attorney represents the entire board, all the 8 members, not a block, not a majority, not a minority. And by taking sides, there is like a clear conflict, who are you representing? And that's my thing. And I try to approach it, but it is what it is.
Well, and then the other, I guess, January meeting, when they were going to vote on the custodian records position, and Tom Forager had to stop them and say, whoa, wait, you can't do that. The board attorney's sitting right there. And she's like, oh, you can just change the name of the position. No, you can't. Bad.
But it's legal. I mean, it's almost comical. Like if you could take even like 2 or 3 steps back from where we are, as far as our knowledge, like it's comical that they are continuing to listen to this legal advice, which I have no expertise, but I feel like it's laughable. I mean, the thing that
It's failing them.
whoever is representing the firm on any particular day is just, shooting from the hip without any, oh yeah, sure, I'm sure it's fine. Checking on the cell phone, checking, yeah, okay, we're good. Yep, carry on.
It raises the question though as to what is it? Why are they keeping them there if they've gotten them in trouble? And that's clearly obvious. They are in that trouble.
The bigger question is why they ever started with them. We had the firm of Porzio, and I forget his name, but it was Vito Gagliardi was our attorney for many years, and he's one of the best in the state. He's well recognized, and we got great advice from him. And then suddenly they stopped using them. Now, I'm not sure why. I think I understand one of the reasons why is, as to who likes the other attorney. But we never got this kind of crappy advice from Vito. And I know when Cy first got on the board, I went to the reorganization meeting and I saw on the agenda they were appointing this other firm. And I said, why aren't you using this? And Varley's answer was, oh, sometimes we had problems. We don't use them as much. I don't know what the problems were, but they're getting crappy advice now, in my opinion.
There are problems now. And
Yeah.
a guy named Vito is not going to let you down.
Well, I mean, I got pictures from the last meeting of the attorney just looking at his phone, getting paid $176 an hour while the kids were presenting. I don't know what the guy's fucking doing there. I mean, I feel like he goes there. I feel like these attorneys go there to surf the web while people are presenting, and then they're there for the last 15 minutes to yell at people. I mean, that's
Checking his bank account.
Yeah, the other thing is on all the boards I've served, and sometimes we might have an attorney there, rarely, but I've never seen a situation where the attorney is a regular active participant.
Yeah.
They were only there if the board member through the board president would say, can we get can you give us some advice on this? They didn't just chime in. This board handles things differently, obviously.
I think one time Tom Forager had to basically say, I don't want the 9th board member.
Oh man, did you remember that? Tom went off. That was great. I think that was also when Pay Attention Francis. Oh no. Pay Attention Francis was another board meeting. There were 2 epic moments in the history of BOE attorney disputes. There was Tom Forager going after the guy and just telling him to shut up for once. And then there was Pay Attention Francis. And those were my two favorite BOE highlights. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up. All right, a couple of questions here. First of all, I think John Sincaglia is the only guy that can really get away with a mustache. And I'm wondering.
I agree.
No, guys, honestly, I think if I wore a mustache, I would look very, very creepy. John Leo.
If you had anything on your face, you'd be creepy.
I don't think a lot of guys can pull off a mustache. I think John, you do it. Now, John, are you Italian, John?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you. I got yelled at and harassed by Laura,
Oh my God.
by Shauna. And I don't want you to react. Okay, I just want you to take it in.
That's an
I want you to
impossible
breathe.
test.
Laura, you can't.
Dude,
You can't contaminate this. Okay, let me just ask the question.
Fine.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Oh my
So,
God.
ketchup on pizza. I
Jeez,
want you to
Mother
just sit. I
Mary.
just want you to sit with it, John. John, don't make the faces. Just take it in. I want you to just think about it, okay?
Shouldn't be a question.
All right, so John, what do you like? Is it really that strange? Like the tomato sauce and the ketchup. It's the same thing, kind of, isn't it?
No.
No comment.
Okay.
Good call.
Okay,
I'm not going to ask any more questions.
If it's of any consolation, the Indians put hot and sour, like it's a Maggi. I think it's Italian in origin. It's hot and sour. It's spicy and sweet, and we do put it on our pizza.
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to
on
get him
board
to
with
accept ketchup, Sai. You're
I'm gonna
going
try
like
that.
in another universe. We're going to
Ketchup
lose
is
him.
unacceptable.
That was up here.
Yeah, like I'm trying to get him here, and you went like to the Maggi spicy sweet stuff.
You cannot put ketchup on pizza.
Or
It's a-
pasta. It's repulsive.
That's
All right, can you put? Well, how about ketchup on pasta?
No, that's
No.
even worse.
Never.
No.
How
When you're
about a
5 years old.
spaghetti sandwich with ketchup in it?
You know, that question, do you remember the movie Goodfellas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay,
where this
at
is
the
going.
very end, when Ray Liotta says he's in a witness protection program, and he says, they gave me egg noodles with ketchup on it. We
Yeah,
can't
I
get a
thought,
good
like, what's
Italian
wrong with
meal
that?
anymore.
Man, you guys, I don't know. What's the best pizza in town, John? In your opinion,
Oh, what's that?
best pizza in town?
We kind of like Clementi's.
There you go.
Clementi's.
Nobody else says Clementes. Yeah.
Best pasta
Thank
dishes
you.
in town.
Ooh.
That's a hard one. I mean, we've had good stuff at the Mayo's.
You should probably just say your kitchen table. I feel like that's a safe answer here.
Yeah. Mm.
My wife wouldn't care if I said that or not.
Now, the other thing that we came up, the last thing that we're going to talk about today, and it bothered me a little bit, but like, you know, I have dark hair and brown eyes. Laura has dark hair and brown eyes. John Leo, and all of our kids are turning out blonde.
What the hell was that for?
I don't know what's going on. It kind of freaked me out.
Well, both of you have blonde wives.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I'm
why
okay.
are we losing?
Losing.
do we need to bring a genetics counselor on?
My
this
oldest
time?
looks like Ireland had a baby.
Let's interview 23andMe next
Are
week.
you suggesting we hire an additional member of the business office?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So no mustache for me or John Leo. No ketchup on pizza or pasta.
Do a
The
mustache
Mayos and
color.
Clementes for food, and we don't have an answer to the issue of why this whole thing with blonde kids is happening.
I think we've solved a lot tonight.
Yeah, I think we've worked on a lot. All right, John, thank you so much for I hope you're going to come back. Are you scared, or are you going to come back? Are you freaked out by this?
Not really.
Okay, good.
We'll see what the reaction on Facebook is.
Oh, it's never good, John. It's
If we get more than 3 thumbs up, I mean, you're in trouble.
No,
Yeah.
but we definitely need him back in the budget.
we need you
season.
back.
We need
Yeah.
you back.
Well, I mean, you know, the long view is, you know, we bought the place down here almost 4 years ago. I recently lost my mom. Okay, that was one of the reasons I was still there. She lived to 107 years old.
Oh,
Damn.
God bless.
Yeah,
Oh,
amazing,
wow.
amazing. Yeah. I mean, I would say in not that much longer, I mean, my son lives in Virginia where my grandkids are. So there's really no reason for me to stay in New Jersey indefinitely and pay New
Well,
Jersey
what about
tax.
us?
wow. Yeah,
So
you're
forth.
so,
I'm just gonna
you're
ask.
John,
the only
come
one.
on.
You have us now, John.
Dude,
You're
that
the only
No,
one
you
that's
can-
making that decision.
John,
However-
go to Florida,
However,
but they still sell plane tickets, baby.
as long as
All right.
I'm here, I'm going to stay involved.
No, we'll call you
Good.
up after you retire from New Jersey. Don't worry, we'll find you.
No, but
Okay.
John will say this like once a Berkeley Heights resident, always about. I have called him.
Almost 35 years.
Yes, and he answered my call from the beach in Naples.
I
Okay?
wouldn't.
Mistake number one, John. Answering a phone call from Cy.
Yeah.
On the beach.
It's never a short call.
No,
No, we know.
Thank you.
nor is it painless. All right, well, thank you everybody for
All right.
John. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
You guys are
All
okay
right.
too.
Good
But
night.
John, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
We'll see you guys
Thanks,
later.
John.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Peace out.
Bye.
Right there.
Bye.